Hi there, and welcome back for our next lesson in APUS history. We are going to be doing topic 5.2 comparison in period 5. So, this is a skill based lesson. I'm your APUSH Lady Boss. Thanks for joining me. As always, click down in the description if you would like some follow along notes to help you as you go through this lesson. So, our learning objective is to compare the relative significance of the effects of the Civil War on American values. So, while there's a lot of things you can compare in period 5, we are just going to zone in on the effects of the Civil War on American values. So, to start, what is comparison? We're going to look at some specific examples in period 5 and then a sample prompt. So, this is one of the three reasoning processes chosen by the College Board. So, the three reasoning processes are comparison, causation, continuity, and change over time. And these are the focus of your essays. They're also going to be some of the main skills on the multiple choice questions, but you especially see explicit references to these skills in your essay questions. So, according to the College Board, you can read through these if you want to, but basically, what they want you to do for this skill is to describe similarities and differences, to explain similarities and differences, and then to also explain the significance of those similarities and differences. So, if you're doing a question that is, for example, like this objective, the relative significance of the effects. What this means is that you would need to discuss the effects of the Civil War and then rank them on their importance and then compare that ranking. So, why is this one more important than another? We'll get into that when we get to the period 5 prompts. So, to start, let's review what are some of the things that happen as a result of the Civil War. Let's first focus on equality and the rights of citizens. So, this is a really important American value that we see having pretty significant changes from the Civil War period. So, before the Civil War, there was the Dred Scott v. Sanford case, which stated that African Americans were not intended to be citizens. But then Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and then the 14th Amendment was ratified, granting citizenship to African Americans. And so we see a really important change happening as a result of the Civil War. However, the 15th Amendment did not lead to suffrage for women. And so this would be something that we could see that the Civil War did not impact suffrage for women. And then we could also break it down looking at political rights did not equal social and economic rights. And so thinking about equality and the rights of citizens, the Civil War did impact this value. We see it increasing in some ways, but not in others. Individualism is another really important American value. Think about how individualism impacts the way that people view their government and how some people would desire to have stronger state governments than a federal government. And this is really evident in secession and secession of the southern states that started the Civil War. But after the Civil War, it's very clear that this is not something that is going to take place again. We can think about individualism connecting to the idea of economic self sufficiency and whether or not people were more or less likely to be economically self sufficient. Specifically, looking at sharecropping, we would see that that is not the case. And then the abolition movement, how many people were advocating for the rights of individuals through the abolition movement, and whether or not that really came to fruition after the Civil War. While slavery did technically end, did life actually change for individuals? Progress and the American dream is another important American value, thinking about whether people were able to attain progress and attain the American dream. Evidence for the negative side of that would be Black codes, segregation, and violence, but then thinking about other things like the Freedmen's Bureau and the development of stronger African American communities with the growth of churches, the growth of Black colleges and universities. And so there's definitely some impact from the Civil War on that. Next up, another American value would be patriotism. Thinking about, did the Civil War really increase patriotism? Think about the sectional tensions that were happening before the Civil War, the actual Civil War, and then the period of Reconstruction. Was there really good examples of patriotism increasing, staying the same, or decreasing in the period. Also, you don't just want to, you could look at it as a whole nation, but you could break it down to one region. And you could think about how even in the North, there was opposition to the Civil War. And so, really kind of showing that this isn't a period where there is a lot of patriotism, despite that being an American value. And another kind of last value we're going to talk about here is mobility, the ability to move from place to place. You can think about before the Civil War, there's Manifest Destiny, there's War with Mexico. At the end of the Civil War, or during the Civil War, really, there's the development of the Transcontinental Railroad, which is going to massively increase the migration of Americans to the West. In the whole period, there is going to be conflict with American Indians over that migration. Also, the term exodusers applies here. Exodusers are going to be African Americans who move out of the South to Kansas during the period. And so this is one where you can think about how maybe the Civil War didn't have a big impact on mobility because it continued throughout the period. It was a strong American value before, and it continued to be a major part of of a development in American history after the period. So, if we were to look at prompts from the last few years related to period 5, so I've looked through the prompts that have been given on the AP exam since 2016. Here is a list of them. For SAQ, for short answer questions, there was a graph on immigration changes. For there was a primary source, it was a reading about the rights of African Americans. For a DBQ, it was about national identity, but it was not the same as this skill we've been focusing on in this lesson. It's before the Civil War. LEQ, there was one over the debates over the role of the federal government and political parties. And then there was also one about foreign policy and territorial growth. So when we think about the objective for this lesson, there have been no comparison prompts in the recent past, and there have been no prompts on the effects of the Civil War on American values. So there's really not a great prompt for us to use as an example to really dive into this skill. So I've created a sample one for us. Evaluate the difference in the relative significance of the effects of the Civil War on American values. So, what this question is asking you to do is what we've been kind of discussing this whole time. You want to describe the effects of the Civil War on American values. How significant are they? And why is one more significant than another? So, in your basic outline, you would have an introduction, which would contain your contextualization and your thesis statement. I think the strongest argument is that there's changing definitions of citizenship, and that's related to the value of equality. That there was that the Civil War had the largest effects on the American value of equality. There's going to be another paragraph about Western migration and mobility, and another paragraph about the issue of states' rights and individualism. And then for a conclusion, you're going to restate your thesis and reinforce your analysis. So for a comparison essay, this is the formula that I would use for a thesis statement. Although there were weaker arguments, there were significant, stronger arguments. So here's the example thesis that I wrote related to this. Although the Civil War had moderate effects on the values of individualism and mobility, the most significant effect was on equality through changing definitions of the rights of citizens. Little typo there. Through the changing definitions of the rights of citizens. So that covers, it tells what the most significant effect is, which is what is going to kind of connect to that idea of comparison. So I hope this was helpful for you for understanding this learning objective and also thinking through a comparison type essay prompt. And if it was helpful for you, please like and subscribe.